your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this Wednesday evening. To start off the broadcast, some good news, but news that still is coming a little late. Massachusetts judge orders Justina Pelletier to be returned to her parents. And many of you know I've followed this case pretty closely. After spending 16 months under the care of the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families, a Massachusetts judge has ordered that 16-year-old Justina Pelletier will be officially returned to her parents in Connecticut Wednesday. So that is always good news, but this is also the same judge that ruled that they were unfit parents and an unfit family for Justina, which is kind of a 180 of what that judge is ruling now, and it's kind of showing some real dirty things going on. And I'm getting this out of BenSwan.com. It mentions here Ben Swan began following the story of Pelletier last November when it was discovered that Boston Children's Hospital had been holding her against her will of her parents for 9 months. The custody battle began when Pelletier was taken to Boston Children's Hospital for flu symptoms after receiving long-term treatment at Tufts Medical Center for mitochondrial disease. Doctors at Boston's Children's Hospital challenged the diagnosis of mitochondrial disease and diagnosed Pelletier instead with somatoform disorder, which is a psychological disorder. Basically, they took her in and before she even got to see the doctor that came from Tufts Medical Center, now working at Boston Children's Hospital, had a chance to get to see her, which that's who she was there to see. Basically, a different department of the hospital stepped in and goes, no, there's no such thing as mitochondrial disease. It's all in her head. And basically, we're taking charge. And the parents at first were like, well, we're going to, see what you have to say. We're trying to trust your judgment. And after they were like, oh, we're just going to stop all of her mitochondrial treatment, and we're going with this one-page treatment for her, basically saying it's all in her head. And they're like, well, we're not sure about that. They basically were like, well, it's too bad. Basically had them escorted out of the hospital and seized Justina. And it's good that she's finally going to be back home. And, well, she is back home now. I'm going to play this clip real quick. here out of benswan.com. Let me get it queued up here. Okay. Give it a second here. I don't want you to have to hear the commercial.
First here at 5:30, our big story this morning, a West Hartford girl at the center of a custody battle that's been drawing national attention is finally heading home. Thanks for being with us this morning. I'm Eric Parker.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Daniels, and for Irene, a judge has ordered Justina Pelletier to return to her family. Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Matt McFarland is live with the mobile newsroom in West Hartford with all the details. Matt.
Good morning. It has been a long battle, and Justina's family is just happy that she is heading home. Now, this all started last year when Justina was being treated at a Boston hospital, but authorities in Massachusetts didn't believe that the teen was sick. Rather, they accused the family of abuse, and after this lengthy custody battle, a Massachusetts judge ruled yesterday to give custody back to Justina's parents.
I can't wait. I'm just so happy to be home.
This was 15-year-old Justina Pelletier's reaction inside a Thompson treatment facility after learning she's finally returning home. The youngest of Lou Pelletier's 4 daughters is heading back to West Hartford after a judge in Massachusetts made the decision yesterday, ending a lengthy custody battle between the family and the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families.
Praise the Lord, she's coming home, no strings attached. She is back to being part of the Pelletier family, and we can start beginning the healing process.
It's been a long and emotional struggle for the family. Tufts Medical Center had treated Justina for mitochondrial disease, but Boston Children's Hospital later diagnosed her problems as psychiatric. Her parents rejected that diagnosis, and when they tried to take her back, Massachusetts DCF stepped in and took custody, sparking the dispute. After battling doctors, state officials, and lawmakers for more than a year, they're finally getting their daughter back. Lou Pelletier told Dennis House they're thankful for all those who supported them along the way, but will remember those who did not.
Governor Malloy.
0.
Senator Murphy.
His office made some phone calls last summer, and when I went to their office in Washington, I thanked them for it. And at least they made some attempts.
Senator Blumenthal.
0.
Congressman Larson.
Congressman Larson came on late in the game. We had a tremendous conversation, and I definitely think he made some well-made phone calls or emails to some certain people that hopefully helped.
Now, earlier this spring, while the matter was still tied up in the Massachusetts courts, Governor Malloy's office issued a statement saying their hearts go out to Justina and her family, adding, quote, "Our Department of Children and Families continues to try to work with them during this difficult time, and we hope for a timely resolution." As for what's next, the family says they plan on holding a news conference later this morning outside that Thompson treatment facility before they pick Justina up, and then they say they also could be considering legal options in the future. We're live with the mobile newsroom in West Hartford. Matt McFarland, Channel 3. Eyewitness News.
Okay, and the Liberty Council, which came on later in the game to defend the family, they are actually still looking at legal action too, and they have more families that are basically getting exactly the same treatment coming out of Boston Children's Hospital, which, benswan.com, and I've reported about these other cases that have been exposed that have come out of the same scenario. And, the simple fact that in their own, words, that when a child becomes property of the state, basically, when the state gains custody, then Boston Children's Hospital is basically able to use them like lab rats. And that's what it really came down to. And that's something that people should be like, well, I'm not taking my kid there. sad thing is there's probably a lot of people still going, oh yeah, it's a children's hospital. They'll look out for them. Those people really need to take a really deep and hard look at the Justina Pelletier case and others that have been exposed. You really need to start questioning our healthcare system, definitely, now that we have Obamacare. We've all been used as guinea pigs by the pharmaceutical companies and the health care system. And I strongly believe that. And, you know, the whole statistics about how many people die of cancer, and I have to argue against it for the simple fact is I see those cancer people. I've had family. I've seen it. I'm pretty sure they didn't die of cancer. They died of the treatment for cancer. It made them so frail that a common cold would kill them. And when they die from something so little because the treatment of cancer basically is killing their body, and they chalk it up as, well, they died from cancer, I think is disingenuous. That the whole argument of all these people dying of cancer becomes a fallacy, and I don't trust the healthcare system completely. And the sad thing is there are legitimate needs for a lot of the services in these healthcare, and there are drugs out there that are helpful for situations, but it's hard to navigate through all the muck, and it makes it where they lose that ability for people to trust them when they act in this manner. And when you look at it that way, and you look at where the population has been going, oh, we want non-GMO, we want healthier food, we want to eat healthier. And then all of a sudden, oh, well, now you're required to have health insurance. And it's not, oh, you know, that health insurance doesn't cover alternative medicines. It definitely is supposed to only cover, you know, the pharmaceutical type induced medical industry. And surgery, you know, okay, there's legitimate needs for surgery, but most of the time when you go to the doctor, you get some type of pill, and you're just sent on your way. It's a way that, well, if people are going to go all natural and seek alternative medicine, well, we'll still get our pay. Seems to go that direction, and it also will make other people go, well, I have to pay for this insurance. I don't have extra money, and I need to use the insurance to pay for my health care. Therefore, I'm stuck into this system that I don't want to be in. And a lot of people are opting, that can afford, are opting to say, hey, you know, tax me or you fine me, whatever you want to call it. I'm not buying into it. Which, in reality, you still are. We have a lot of issues, and I think America is really collapsing faster than I originally thought. I've been looking at all these stories. China buying up all this property in Detroit. China buying up golf courses. China basically buying all these repossessed homes. And I'm like, well, you know, China's buying up quite a bit. They're buying up factories. They're buying up commercial ground. Then you see that Australia has basically made a deal that their resources are going to be diverted to China. Yeah, they'll benefit. They're being diverted to China. I'm like, what is this about? And China's becoming the new superpower. There's no doubt about it. stories coming out about, all the private jets that are owned. And then I'm sitting here and I'm scrolling through and seeing something about Glenn Beck talking about 747 Airbuses now being bought by billionaires out of Russia, China, and the Middle East. No mention of any American billionaires buying it. No mention of any European. And you really have to go, hold on. We've lost our wealth. Where is our wealth? Well, we've been policing the world, and while we've been policing the world, we have also been robbed from the inside. And with China buying up property, we're still being robbed. And you think about it, they're going to have control of natural resources. When they start buying up complete areas of land where they can access resources, then you gotta think about it. Well, they're giving our resources like, BP maybe. Everything's, our wealth is exported. We think, we buy a TV, now we have wealth, but then the TV goes out 3 years later. You spent $800, $1,000 on that TV. Your wealth is leaving the country, and it's just getting ridiculous. I do have a little bit of good news that came out of Forbes. The Free State Project, a libertarian testing ground for Bitcoin 3D printers and drones. And here's a little picture. It says, I hereby state my solemn intent to move to the state of New Hampshire within 5 years after 20,000 participants have signed up. Once there, I will exert the fullest practical effort toward the creation of a society in which the maximum role of civil government is the protection of individuals' life, liberty, and property. Long before billionaire venture capitalist Peter Thiel dreamed up the idea of a floating libertarian island nation, a 24-year-old Yale grad student named Jason Sorens proposed a far more down-to-earth experiment for those who wanted to live the limited government lifestyle. That a critical mass of freedom-loving people establish residence in a small state and take over the state government. The Free State Project call to action was in 2001. By 2003, 5,000 people agreed to take part, and they held a vote to decide which low-population state would be the staging ground for the libertarian invasion, which would be triggered when 20,000 people signed on. New Hampshire population 1.3 million, one narrowly beaten out Wyoming population 576,000, which I think Wyoming probably would have been a little bit better, but they chose New Hampshire. And earlier movers began trickling in to help the state fully realize its live free or die motto. 13 years later, there are over 2,000 free staters scattered around New Hampshire, and the petition is now 4,000 signatures short of triggering the full move. The concentration of free staters is highest in New Hampshire. Twice a year during the group's 2 annual gatherings, a Bachelinian free market festival called Pork Fest, which is held in the woods in the summertime, and an academic-spirited conference called the Liberty Forum, which is held at a hotel in the wintertime. I was invited to snowy New Hampshire this February to speak at the later because free staters were interested in 2 things I write about, Bitcoin and cooperative privacy practices. I discovered that this isolated group had fully adopted Bitcoin and that it's extremely enthusiastic about other freedom-enhancing technologies such as 3D printers and encryption. Everyone I met in the project owned Bitcoin and was willing to accept it for goods and services. Of the couple thousand people living there, at least 7 own 3D printers, though the idea originally was to get critical mass to influence the political process. Many in the movement now feel that the freedoms they want may be better realized through technology that routes around the government rather than engaging in it directly. When I arrived at the airport, the organizers had arranged for me to be picked up by a Bitcoin-accepting driver in a winter-assaulted red Prius. I buckled up, but my driver, Reyes, simply ignored the car's annoying, insistent beat that he put his seatbelt on until it finally stopped. New Hampshire is the only state without a mandatory seatbelt law, and the Free Staters will do their best to keep it that way. Reyes had moved from Orlando 6 months earlier, led to the movement through his support of the Libertarian presidential candidate, Ron Paul. It's amazing here living with all these people who hold the same beliefs as you. He says, we want to push back against bad laws, decriminalize marijuana, push for more liberal gun and knife laws, keep a ban on license plate readers. We want to eliminate regulations, taxes, licenses. Within our community, a lot of us ignore that, and so we only work with other Free Staters. While not all Free Staters are flouting the law, if one is ignoring regulations and taxes, Bitcoin is a good currency to do it in, and there's no need to set up an account with a bank, which entails paperwork and financial monitoring. Eric Voorhees, a Bitcoin entrepreneur who recently made headlines for settling a suit with the SEC over selling shares in Bitcoin businesses for Bitcoin, moved to New Hampshire in May 2011 to join Free State Project. It was there that he first heard about Bitcoin after someone posted about it in the Free State Facebook group. Very few Free Staters knew about it. At that point, they don't like using government money, but they were more into gold and silver than virtual currency, he says. I went down the rabbit hole and couldn't stop talking about it, and then warned other Free Staters up to it. Boris notes that Roger Ver, a Bitcoin entrepreneur who lives in Tokyo, was also an early signer of the Free State petition and bought Bitcoin ads on Free Talk Live, a libertarian radio station associated with the project. Nine months after moving to New Hampshire, Voorhees moved to New York to go work for BitInstant, an early Bitcoin exchange that since shut down, its founder facing criminal charges, but other Free Staters took on the Bitcoin mantle. Zach and Josh Harvey moved to New Hampshire from Israel in 2011 to join the Free State Project. Frustrated by the bureaucracy and regulations in Tel Aviv, they decided to start a Bitcoin ATM company called Lamassu that's now sold hundreds of machines around the world. A Bitcoin ATM was heavily used at the Liberty Forum, but no one has set up permanently in New Hampshire yet, says Harvey. And you can read the rest of the article, and that's at Forbes. And again, it's the Free State Project, a libertarian testing ground for Bitcoin, 3D printers, and drones. And, I believe in the idea of the Free State Project. I don't know about the founder or the people in charge. I don't know. I've heard so much conflict about whether the actual, website and organization leaders actually represent most of the Free Staters. But I think the whole project up there, that's something that is a positive. And I think a lot of the testing ground is up there for a lot of these issues. And we've seen a lot come out of it. So, we might not agree with everything, but we have to do something, and I think that's what the Free State Project really shows, is the passion to really make the change ourselves without, we don't go to government and ask for change. We demand change in our own lives, and that's what creates a change nationally. And it all starts with the discussion and the talking about, the idea of liberty, the idea of you as an individual being, responsible, and you own yourself. No one else owns you. They don't have that authority to use you as a slave. You own yourself. Right now, I am going to play something from Stefan Molyneux, How to Handle Criticism. And I found this one pretty interesting, so I want to...
So in the category of, I'm pretty sure I've done a podcast on this, but apparently I haven't. A friend of mine sent me a question, how to handle criticism. How to handle the criticism. And it's a very important question. If you want to do anything in this life, and particularly if you want to do anything involving the moral improvement of mankind, you may run into the odd stitch or two of criticism. And I think that's natural, and I think it's healthy, and I think anybody who wants to propose a moral improvement of mankind should be subject to the very strictest amounts of skepticism and perhaps even hostility. That seems to me entirely right. Because if you suggest a moral improvement to mankind and you get it wrong, if you get, say, a French Revolution instead of an American Revolution, or if you get communism instead of capitalism, well, the lives of hundreds of millions of people hang in the balance. So yes, we should be enormously skeptical towards anyone who claims to improve the moral standing of mankind. Morality is the third rail not just of politics, but of life itself. And anybody who claims a revolution in ethics should be subject to the most withering, sandblasting scrutiny and skepticism, and I certainly welcome that approach, since what I'm playing with is the very essence of society down here in the dungeons of ethics. It's really important that I don't get my wires crossed, and it's really important that people are as skeptical towards me as they would be to any potential benefactor or catastrophe maker of mankind. So if you're going to do anything important, then you're going to be criticized. Of course, I mean, you can't lift up a finger in this world without 10,000 people screaming at you that it ought to be a thumb. It has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. So I think before we talk about how to handle criticism, I think we should talk about what criticism is. Now, I am a dictionary called Steph. Meism is my language definition, so I'm going to talk about what I define as criticism, and you can take issue with it or correct me if you want, which would actually be entirely in line with my definition, but this is what I work with. So criticism, to me, is the attempt to help you achieve the values that you claim. Criticism is an attempt to help you achieve the values that you claim. And criticism is thus morally neutral. I mean, you could be critical of somebody not using the right garroting technique to shiv a homeless guy. That doesn't mean that it's moral. But if somebody's trying to shiv a homeless guy, he wants to kill him, and criticism is an attempt to correct the person's behavior or thinking in order to get him or her to closer to achieving the goals that he or she claims or states or shows that they want to achieve. So if you say, I want to pass this test, or I want to be really proficient at playing Bohemian Rhapsody on the piano, then criticism is that which is aimed at helping you achieve the goals that you state. And thus, criticism obviously is morally neutral. Now, that's criticism. Its very close cousin, called verbal abuse, is those actions destructive of your desire to reach your goals that are undertaken for the sake of anxiety, avoidance, or status seeking on the person who's criticizing or attacking you, right? So attacks versus criticism. So if criticism is somebody's legitimate and valuable and helpful attempt to get you to achieve the values that you want to achieve, that you claim you want to achieve, then there are some preconditions necessary for criticism to be accepted. Right? Criticism that is not accepted is just somebody doing soliloquies to an empty theater. Right? Criticisms that are rejected are, ridiculous, embarrassing, futile, silly, embarrassing. And I don't know that there's any greater scorn or contempt that someone can pour on another human being than refusing to even take any interest in the criticisms that are being offered. I think that's important to understand. So, how do you know whether somebody is criticizing rather than attacking? Well, do they know the goal that you're trying to achieve? Number one, do they know the goal? Right? All criticism begins with empathy. It doesn't mean sympathy. Sympathy is when you agree with somebody else's emotional state. Empathy is simply when you correctly perceive somebody else's emotional state. Right? Empathy is necessary but not sufficient for sympathy. Right? So empathy is a guy wants to rob me. I get that a guy wants to rob me. I see from his emotional state and body language that he wants to come and do me harm. That's empathy. You're correctly identifying with somebody else's hostility. Sympathy is when you actually you agree with and wish to relieve the other person's emotional state. So as a person's crying, I'll give them a hug, and that's sympathy. So the first question that I ask myself when somebody has a criticism is, does the person show empathy? In other words, have they asked questions before they have offered up a criticism? That's sort of the first thing. Because criticism without empathy is simply self-masturbatory abuse, hopefully in the aforementioned empty theater. Who cares? It's nothing to do with me, nothing to do with anyone, just that person attempting to open up your mouth wide and drop the little worms of their venomous self-discontent into you so that they feel slightly better about themselves. It's a way of getting you to drain the abscesses of their own self-hatred. It doesn't have anything to do with you other than as a poison container, literally a toilet they can take their emotional shits into, and you are wise to have absolutely nothing to do with anybody like that. That's just licking a leper. So that's the first question I ask, is does the person have an understanding, a deep understanding of the goal, let's just say the goal that I'm trying to achieve? That's important. So that's number one. Number two, do they have a deep and wise understanding of the methods by which that goal is to be achieved? Right? Somebody says, I may correctly perceive that you want to climb Mount Everest. That does not mean that I have a deep and wise understanding of how that can actually be achieved. Right? So, if you want to climb Mount Everest and I see you putting on scuba gear, I can say, I don't think in fact, I know that scuba gear is not what you need. If you're going to go down the Mariana Trench, I guess you need a scuba gear plus a bath escape, but if you want to climb Mount Everest, scuba gear is not the way to go. Well, that's a criticism based on a correct knowledge of your goal, but it's simply a negative. Like, don't do that. I know that. I know that. You shouldn't be naked. You shouldn't be wearing only a kilt and an Olivia Newton-John headband. But then I say, well, what should I be doing? Well, I don't know. I don't know exactly. I assume you need a Sherpa, the bones of Sir Edmund Hillary, and oxygen tanks, and a suicidal sense of achievement. But I don't know exactly. I'm not wise in how you climb Everest, but I know that scuba gear isn't gonna do much for you. So, if somebody wants to criticize me, then my first question is: does that person have a good understanding of the goals that I'm trying to achieve? And do they have a good understanding of the methodology by which those goals should be achieved? That's number two. Number three is, do they have not just a theoretical but a practical understanding of how to achieve the goals that I want to achieve? Theory, I don't know. I mean, I hate to say it, but theory, who cares? I mean, theory doesn't matter a whole lot, and everybody gets that. I mean, everybody understands that. I may be very good at reading Lee Strasberg's work or Uta Hagen's work on acting. That doesn't mean that I know how to act, right? Knowing the history of art does not make me an artist. But so theory, I mean, who cares, right? All that matters in the achievement of things in this world is practice, practice, practice. Like that old joke. Some guy comes up to a New Yorker and says, "How do I get to Carnegie Hall?" He says, "Practice, practice, practice." Because it's very easy to pontificate from a chair, or an academic chair for that matter. It's very easy to pontificate about how the world should be run and everything that should happen and so on. But I don't really care that much about, like, you know, people who've not been in the free market. Please don't talk about them. I mean, just making it tougher for everyone else. The people who've, anyway. So theory is only of some value. Now, the criticism, the self-criticism just popped into my mind that I was talking about parenting before I became a parent. But that's not true. That's not true that was pure theory. You see, people think that you need to be a parent in order to know how to raise children, which is nonsense. Until your child becomes an adult, you have far more experience of parenting by being a child than you ever will have of being a parent. It's like saying, well, I can't say that women shouldn't lie unless I'm a woman. Well, that would be nonsense, right? There's universals are universals. And now, of course, if for my first 18 years I'd been a woman and then done a very exciting revolving door Superman switch, Superman switch, then people would say, well, okay, you lived your first 18 years as a woman, and therefore you have something of value to say about femininity or whatever. And so, of course, you can talk about parenting because we've all had 18 years of being parented in one form or another. So, anyway, I just sort of wanted to point that out. 18 years of experience, if you think about it well, is more than qualifies anybody to talk about anything. And we all understand that. Like, so people who come out of MBA who've got no experience don't really make that much. But once they've proven themselves and they've, got real experience under their belt, the salt and pepper factor, as we used to call it in the software field, well, that's sort of a different matter, and that changes the equation considerably. Reading books on a marriage doesn't make you an expert on marriage. I mean, I've been married for 10 years now, and I think I'm pretty good at knowing what makes a marriage work, and because I thought deeply about it and talked a lot about my wife, talked about lots of people on the show, I'm pretty good at doing podcasts, 3,000 plus of them all told, so yes, I think that's got some experience. So, the whole purpose of this is criticism, and the acceptance of criticism is an incredibly intimate state. This is why I really don't care. I can't express how little it registers on me that strangers criticize me. Because it means that they don't understand how criticism is a very intimate act. Criticism means that you must get close to someone, and criticism means that you must deeply understand and agree with their goals. Otherwise, criticism is more likely to be sabotage than it is to be helpful. Right? I mean, it's the old thing that if someone comes into your house and says, "I'm going to kill your wife," where is she? She's at work. You'll say she's not. She's somewhere else, because you don't want to help that person achieve his goals, because you don't achieve. Hopefully you don't agree with his goals. So if some stranger slags me or whatever, it absolutely does not register. I guess they think like they're heaving a big rock into a pond, but it just disappears without even a ripple. It doesn't register. Simply because the person doesn't understand what criticism is. All they know is that they try to use criticism to hurt someone, but in order for that to work, you have to have some respect for the person who's criticizing you. And if you don't have respect for the person who criticizes you, they're like a bird attacking themselves in a mirror. That's all they're doing. I guess they get other people to agree with them, but if it doesn't land on the person it's intended for, anyway, it's just silly. So if somebody comes and criticizes me, then the first question I ask is, do they have empathy? Well, to have empathy, you can really see that in the form of the criticism. Empathy means that you ask some questions of the other person before you attempt to change their behavior. So does the person does the person know what I'm trying to achieve with my life or with the particular action I'm trying to do? Does the person know my goals? Does the person agree with my goals? Does the person have a deep knowledge of the methodology to achieve those goals? And does the person have actual, practical, tangible experience in the achievement of those goals? This is all before I even bother to engage one single brain cell in whether or not the criticism has any validity whatsoever. These are the barriers which any potential critic must overcome in me, and I would submit in any rational person. These are the barriers that any critic of mine must overcome before I'll even bother imagining or thinking of looking at the content of what it is that they have to say. And this is why, for me, like I'm sitting in this glorious sun-drenched study and, very far away over the hills and mountains, if I squint, I can see a few people waving placards, and that's about it. That's as far as the general trolley criticism comes from me. I mean, what can I say? You have to have rational standards. Otherwise, you're going to be prey to every idiot who comes along with a megaphone. I mean, you have to be responsible for your health, for your life. You make sure that you have standards by which people can be able to criticize you. Now, if someone's in your life and they criticize you a lot, and this is almost always the case because they're family. I mean, why would you choose somebody who just criticizes you a lot? I mean, how the hell is that supposed to help anyone? I mean, it doesn't, right? Then there are some important things to examine and to become assertive in your own life. There are some important things to examine. So first of all, you say, okay, well, how do I feel after this person has criticized me? If I do not feel motivated for improved excellence, then there's a problem, right? Because if criticism is supposed to help you achieve your goal, which the person agrees with, understands, and has practical experience, then you should feel motivated to pursue that goal, right? So if some guy, if you want to go climb Everest and there's some guy at your dinner party who's climbed Everest 10 times, then clearly he's going to tell you all about how to climb Everest, and you're going to be like, damn, I am really ready to go do something stupid and self-destructive for the sake of vanity and boredom. Sorry. I'm so ready to go climb that mountain because it's there. What a ridiculous answer. Anyway, you're going to feel enthusiastic about it because that person has just saved you a whole lot of time, effort, and danger by pointing out how things can be achieved, how you can achieve the things that you want. They have practical experience, they've saved you a lot of time, and so on. Right, so in the early days in business, occasionally we'd have some guy come by who was really helpful and useful and getting us to understand certain things and save us time and money and energy. I felt a huge motivation to go and achieve my goals because I had just been given 50 shortcuts on how to achieve my goals. So goals were that much closer and so on. So that's the important thing. Do you feel closer to and more enthusiastic towards achieving your goals after being criticized? If you do, then that's important to understand. It doesn't mean the person is always right, but it does mean that that's an important emotional experience to process. Certainly if you feel depressed and self-hating and exhausted and debilitated and so on, then you've just, you just got venom sac zinged, right? You just got used as a poison container and probably without even the courtesy of a reach around. Obscure reference. Yeah, maybe too obscure. Not that obscure. So that's another important aspect to understand about criticism. Now, another question to ask is does this person understand my goals? Now, criticizing someone in the absence of understanding their goals is just completely ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. How do I get to Carnegie Hall? Here's a scuba tank. What the hell are you talking about? I just asked you, my goal is to get to Carnegie Hall. What on earth does a scuba tank have to do with anything? So if you don't understand what people's goals are, then criticizing them is simply a masturbatory act of shitting on their dreams or their self-esteem. All right, so you'd ask someone, what are my goals? You should work harder. To achieve what? See, criticism in the absence of an agreement on shared goals is ridiculous. It literally is ridiculous. It's like saying, I would really like a piece of cheese. I bought you some concrete so you can build that house. It's like, what? No, I really wanted a piece of cheese. Penguin, you say? Yes, let's pretend to be penguins. Right? You're not doing a good penguin. That's not how you work with concrete. It's like, no, I wanted a piece of cheese. Like, if there's no agreement on the goals, then criticism is ridiculous. Now, you may disagree with somebody on the goals or say their goals should be changed or whatever. That's more of a reorientation, I would say, than a criticism. You say, well, my goals are to sponge off my parents my whole life. Well, then you can change the goals if you want. You can say, well, there's the pluses and minuses to that or whatever. There's things going to be problematic about that. But I mean, that's very rare. I mean, most people criticize, and they don't have any idea that criticism is supposed to help someone achieve good goals that you agree with. I mean, that's really the point. I mean, they just nag or whatever. They don't have an agreement on goals, so they end up just nagging, right? The kid doesn't want to clean up, and the mom wants him to clean up his room. Well, just nagging. And you criticize, you need to clean up your room. Well, you're talking about goals, not achieving those goals, right? And people avoid talking about goals and simply will talk about achieving goals because they don't want to expose their complete ignorance of the universals that they're claiming, right? So, a mom might say, you need to clean your room. And the kid says, why? He says, because I like it messy, right? So this is a big problem, right? If the mom says, well, you need to clean your room because I like it tidy, and the kid's going to rightly say, well, I like it messy. So what does that have to do with anything? Now, the mom might say, well, because I or your dad pays your bills, right? Well, okay, so then it's a monetary transaction. I should do something because you pay me to do it, or because you're paying. So basically, it's not out of any goodness. It's simply because you hold economic power over me, right? That's also not something. You should do it because it will make me feel happier. Well, it makes me feel happier to have it messy, so why should I do it? If we universalize making the other person happy, it'll make you happy if I clean it. It makes me happy if it's messy, right? So because people have these implicit universals that they don't want to talk about because they're not actually universal, they end up nagging. And they assume that the goal is good and the deviation from the goal is immoral, but they'll never explicitly state why the goal is good because they don't want to be caught in the flypaper of imposing universals that they don't want to submit to, which they can justly be asked to submit to should they explicitly and clearly attempt to inflict them. So, I mean, that's the big price why people don't talk about whether the goal is important. They just assume that it is good to do X, Y, and Z, and then you have to do it, and if you don't do it, you're bad. But there's no agreement on goals, and there's no agreement on goals, and the criticism is, you need to dress in your Sunday best because I want to look good in front of the neighbors. Well, parents don't really want to say that. They come up with respect for the church. It's like, well, but Jesus, didn't even have any underwear, for God's sakes. He didn't even shave. Didn't even have the right skin color for his region. I mean, good heavens. So the avoidance of determining, I mean, solving 95% of human conflict is just getting the same goals and the same methodologies and so on. It's all important. People will also criticize you in a very overhanded, negative or destructive way because they wish to avoid the lack of credibility that they have. The credibility they don't have. I don't know, there's no good way to say it. They wish to hide the fact that they don't have any credibility because they haven't achieved what they want you to achieve, right? Right, so, I mean, this endless comedy, it's endless fodder for comedy, right? For the parents to say, don't do drugs when they themselves smoked, marijuana when they were younger, or they say, you need to clean up your room, and then the grandmother says, oh, your mama was such a messy, blah, 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 right? I mean, it's just typical. you need to respect me when the mom doesn't respect her own parents or whatever it is, right? Or it's simply afraid of them, which is not the same. Respect and fear are opposites, right? Anyway, so in these kinds of situations, it's really important to understand what criticism is and why, the vast majority of criticism is not criticism, but merely a form of leveling, merely a form of verbal abuse, and so on. It should be avoided like an incredible toxin, which is really what it is.
Now, really, this gets down to the concept of be the change you want to see. It's hard to be critical of someone doing something when you do it yourself, or you've done it yourself. I think the difference between criticism and really what people want to call constructive criticism is, well, let's say at one time you did a drug and now your child's doing that drug and you had bad experiences. You understand maybe that drug was, not a healthy lifestyle. You don't go, well, you can't do that. That's bad. Don't do it. What you have to do is share your experiences. And it's really not criticism as it is giving a understanding of the consequences that you personally had to go through, and basically making that child realize, is this the path you want to go down? And really the talking does a lot more than the yelling and nagging. The so-called, criticism becomes more just anti-constructive, and I think most of us understand that from when we were kids. When your parents would go, "Don't you do that," you'd sneak off and do it. You find more constructive ways of interacting, and I think personal experiences have a definite role in it, but I think it has to be also at a more personal level with people that are close to those individuals. They go, well, sharing, personal experiences is important, but then they'll use some person that travels the country that no one knows, sharing his experiences, and I don't think that has much of an impact as people that are close with that individual that you're trying to influence in a better life path, maybe. And again, that still comes down to ideology, and I think most people that share the ideology on what liberty is that I do really are good people. They operate on sharing and, the concept of, just, sharing love. That simple fact of working together voluntarily without the threat of force has more of an impact on a community. And I think, again, the Free State Project does show that. And there's a lot of controversy that surrounds that too, but it's one of those things you're going to find that in any movement, in any type of situation like that, organization or whatnot. You're going to find people that are trying to take advantage of it. You're going to see people that are misrepresenting it, and people that are infiltrating it. And it's just something that will happen. But I think with the Free State Project and a lot of the individuals out there that are a part of that idea that might not always be in line with the organization leaders, they still understand the concept, and they their ability to operate under a lot of these ideologies shows that even when there is conflict, things get to go along peacefully. It doesn't require force to fix any of this problem. People learn to agree to disagree and understand that that doesn't mean that someone needs to rule over the other. And I see a lot of that happening in a lot of these situations. They might disassociate with each other, but when it stops with the bashing and just learning to say, hey, this is my belief, this is their belief, and that's where we leave it, and good luck to the next party. We achieve much more because then we're not so focused on that infighting that accomplishes nothing. It's one thing to discuss, it's another thing to really play into the infighting. That's what the elites want. They don't want a free society to operate peacefully. They want the infighting. They want it to become violent because that plays right into their hands. And we know that we're constantly attacked in the alternative media saying, well, these people are responsible and they're the reason others are violent, when most of us preach nonviolence. It seems to just play into their hands no matter what if you want to believe the propaganda. And I think alternative media is really, really important for breaking through that. And this one coming out of benswan.com. Exclusive, Sheriff Mack smeared by Southern Poverty Law Center connected to Las Vegas shooters. And I did play a clip from Adam Kokesh last time. This one out of Ben Swan says, Constitutional Sheriff Richard Mack supports cop-killing patriots, ? While those exact words have not yet been used, that is the narrative that is being pushed by the Southern Poverty Law Center and other media as they found the connection between two lunatic cop killers in Las Vegas and Sheriff Mack. A smear began on Monday when the Southern Poverty Law Center ran a story attempting to connect Sheriff Mack with Jared and Amanda Miller, the Las Vegas couple who embarked on a shooting spree Sunday. They left 2 police officers dead. As we reported, Jared and Amanda reportedly turned their guns on themselves in a suicide pact, and all 5 people, including the Millers, 2 police officers, and 1 innocent bystander, were killed. I canceled them because it just never had anything like this, Ben, where somebody is trying to connect me to a guy who committed a murder, says Sheriff Richard Mack. Less than 24 hours after the shooting spree, the Southern Poverty Law Center, through their blog, Hate Watch, had discovered a picture of Sheriff Mack and Jared Miller standing together at a libertarian event. The photo had been taken from Miller's Facebook page. The Hate Watch article states, Miller also posted a photo of himself with Richard Mack, a former Arizona sheriff and leader of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, a radical patriot group whose members were also at the Bundy standoff. The two met at February 8th campaign debate for Libertarian candidates held in Clark County, Nevada, where Bundy's ranch is located. Reached this morning by Hate Watch with the news, Mack professed shock. Oh no, he said, I was afraid that he might have been at the Bundy ranch. As soon as I heard about it, I was afraid of that. According to Sheriff Mack, the Southern Poverty Law Center never interviewed him about this picture, though he says the SPLC claims to have him on tape making the statement. In this video clip, Mack explains why the SPLC would have used a fake name to get any quote from him. By Tuesday, CNN had contacted Sheriff Mack asking him to come on their network and talk about his connection to the Millers. In an exclusive interview with Ben Swan, Sheriff Mack explains why he turned CNN down at the last minute. CNN wanted me on. They're sending somebody to pick me up. They hired a company to drive me over to a satellite receiver in Phoenix, which is about a half-hour drive. About an hour and a half before they were supposed to drive me over, I canceled them because it just never had anything like this. Ben, where somebody is trying to connect me to a guy who committed a murder, says Sheriff Mack via Skype. The connection, however, ambiguous, has been made. In fact, Mack says a local Phoenix TV station ran a story titled Arizona Connection to Las Vegas Shooting. Again, the picture of Miller and Sheriff Mack was on display. So where did that picture come from? I was asked by Libertarian Party to moderate a meet the candidates night with sheriff candidates in Las Vegas. I went to it. Everything was fine. It was open to the public. Wasn't my event. I was doing a book signing afterwards, and several people asked me to take pictures, and this idiot was one of them, says Mack. Mack goes on to say that he never had contact with the Millers beyond that one photo. He explains that in the course of a year, he does about 175 events and probably takes between 50 and 100 photos with people at any given event. Mack says he is disgusted by the way media and SPLC is attempting to paint him as someone who supports violence against police officers. I was in law enforcement for 20 years. Never once did I shoot anybody, nightstick anybody, mace anybody. I never even beat anybody up. I never slugged another human being in my life. I never professed violence. I have been totally against violence. I stood against violence as a cop, as a street cop, as a patrol officer, as a sergeant, as a sheriff. We even had firsters in our country, and I protect them against other state police who wanted to attack them and wanted to get their attack dogs and arrest them all and beat them all up, or maybe even worse, and I protected them, says Mack. Meanwhile, he explains that not only did he have absolutely no relationship with the Millers, even the Bundy Ranch connection is being twisted by media. As we have reported, Sheriff Mack is a longtime friend of Cliven Bundy, and his organization, CSPOA, had a large presence during the Bundy Ranch standoff. It has been reported that the Millers turned out at the ranch and they were told to leave by the Bundy family. Sheriff Mack says that while he was not aware of the Millers being at the Bundy Ranch, according to Cliven Bundy's son, they were told to leave because Bundy family felt Jared and Amanda Miller were too radical. One of the Bundy's sons, I believe it was, Amin, is quoted. I haven't talked to Amin, but he is quoted in a report saying that the Millers were asked to leave, and they did, and that they were the only people who were asked to leave. They were just too radical. Over the past few days, Sheriff Mack and his wife received a number of hateful phone calls from people around the country who insist that he supports the killing of police officers. In one case, when Sheriff Mack says he explained to the caller that there was no relationship between himself and the Millers, the caller wasn't interested in truth and continued to call him names. Mack says is the entire point of the SPLC was trying to, with what he calls a drive-by hit piece. I know what they are trying to do, and there is nobody better at it than SPLC. They're really good at knowing where the line is, so they're trying to further destroy me and what I do by putting this picture out there and making me sound like some sort of nut again. They want those two to mesh together to where Sheriff Mack and my organization are connected with this lunatic murderer. You can read the rest of that article at benswan.com. again, it wasn't just him. They, we're also connecting with Adam Kokesh. The simple fact is we constantly preach nonviolence. And what we have to really start asking ourselves is, where is the violence coming from? Where is the majority of the violence coming from? Where is the majority of the terrorizing of everyday citizens coming from? And that's the main issue that most people are trying to argue. And we're saying that the government is out of control. When you keep using force, people do have breaking points. Does that justify violence? It might not justify it, but it explains it. You can't push a society to a certain point. And that's why they want guns away. Well, we could push society farther to the breaking point when they don't have a way to defend themselves. And history has shown that's not a good idea. And I got one out of Breitbart.com right here. And this one is titled, Hillary Clinton wants automatic weapons ban, says gun owners terrorize the majority of people. What gun owners? The government gun owners or the citizen gun owners? And I think the government wins on that one. Says here, during a June 17th CNN town hall, Hillary Clinton said she wants to implement an assault weapons ban and high-capacity magazine ban to keep people from entering school property with an automatic weapon to murder innocent children, students, and teachers. Let's just go ahead and take this little first quote from her. Okay, the places that those guns are already banned at will be safer if we ban them everywhere because the criminals obey laws now that say they can't be on the school property with assault. Those people? Don't think so. So there's your first flaw. It says here in the video of the event, a Maryland school teacher asked Hillary if she thought banning assault weapons or high-capacity magazines would do any good. Hillary said yes. Then expounded, first of all, I think as a teacher or really any parent, what's been happening with these school shootings should cause everybody to just think hard. We make hard choices and we balance competing values all the time. And I was disappointed that the Congress did not pass universal background checks after the horrors of the shootings at Sandy Hook. And now we've had more in the same time since. And I don't think any parent, any person should have to fear about their child going to school or going to college because someone, for whatever reason, psychological, emotional, political, ideological, whatever it means, could possibly enter the school property with an automatic weapon and murder innocent children, students, and teachers. And she keeps saying assault rifle and automatic weapon. Well, that's not what they have. They keep calling the semi-autos assault rifles and then going they're fully auto, they're automatic weapons. They're not fully auto, though. You calling them automatic weapons, a semi-auto, really? It's just, they keep trying to do that, and it pisses me off to no end. But Clinton went on to say we cannot let a minority, it's a minority too now, a minority of people hold a viewpoint that terrorizes the majority of people. She concluded, my view is, yes, we need to trash this out in the political realm, or thrash this out in the political realm, but the vast majority of Americans, even law-abiding gun owners, want background checks at work, information that is shared immediately, and an awareness that we're going to have to do a better job protecting the vast majority of our citizens, including our children, from that very, very small group that is unfortunately prone to violence, and now with automatic weapons can wreak so much more violence. Unfortunately for Hillary, the statement has yielded another gaffle for her book launch press blitz. No one is using automatic weapons, which are already illegal in school shootings. Secondly, Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat, author of the Manchin 2-knee gun control bill that didn't pass, admitted that this bill would not have stopped the heinous crime at Sandy Hook Elementary, and Breitbart News has reported that the bill would not have stopped the attacks at Santa Barbara, Troutdale, Oregon, Fort Hood, Arapahoe High School, LAX, Fort Hood, or the Aurora Theater, among other crimes either. And it's just getting out of hand. It really is. Anybody that believes in half of this crap, really, it's just, these people are making us less safe, and they know it. But why would they do that? Because it's making them more safe. It's concreting their rule over you. And that's what it is. And people are like, well, we need a violent revolution. No, absolutely not. That's the worst thing that can happen, because that will just inspire more tyrannicals to gain power. And a lot of these tyrannical people that aren't in the public, they're well equipped, and they'll pop out of nowhere and still gain control. What we need is a really paradigm shift in the way people are thinking, and we need to reach for liberty and grab it and just hold on to it and not let it go. And by a large enough group of people basically not allowing government to intrude, large populaces around the nation, and it just, they only have the power we give them, and we have to start taking that responsibility. If you want the power back in your life, you have to be willing to grab hold of it. You can't allow them to just run amok and go, well, I want liberty, I want to be free. Well, you have to grab a hold of the freedom. And unless the population around America and the rest of the world start doing that, you're going to constantly see a repeat of history. And the direction we're headed is proving that. Again, that the whole 747 private jets by billionaires, 747 Airbuses. None of them are from Western countries. We are declining. You might not realize it as much, but go look at some photos of Detroit. Go look at old photos of Detroit, and then look at photos now. We are falling apart, and the death throes of government are when they start grasping for more power, because the power that they had before doesn't get them as much wealth. They want to keep their lifestyles up, so they're going to reach for more power and keep robbing from the everyday citizen. A lot of the ones that were already wealthy, that they want to fight over here for what little wealth America has moved to China, moved to other countries, moved their companies to these other countries. These people know what's going on. They understand. It's not that they dislike America. They haven't seen enough of the population here in America stand up for themselves. They haven't lost the ideas or the ideology of free market. They've ran to freer markets. And we're going to continue to lose all of our rights unless the population is going to stand up. Maybe these Tea Party candidates will prove some of us more diehard libertarians wrong and actually start making those changes. That's if enough of them can get elected. And, you know, I'm always willing to, you know, be proved wrong. I wish more people would start proving me wrong when I look at the direction we're heading. I hope there's enough people out there waking up that we're going to start seeing those changes. And, you know, I look at a lot of the stories that come out of 10th Amendment Center, and, you know, those are always, you know, a little spark of light at the end of the tunnel that you're like, okay, you know, maybe we can get enough people to really start supporting these things. And, you know, I look at organizations like Free and Equal. You know, they're making strides to try to free up the electoral system. Okay, I had something up here if I can find it again. If I can find it. Thought I had it queued up, but I must hit the back button there. And here it is. Maybe. This one is U.S. captures Benghazi suspect.
Benghazi mastermind has been captured in Libya without gunfire. Abu Khatalah's arrest marks the first by the United States in connection with the deadly 2012 attack on the U.S. diplomatic compound in Benghazi. Intelligence given by locals helped to lure the militia leader to a location south of the city, where he was nabbed without a fight. One former Libyan intelligence official expressed surprise that Abu Khatallah was taken without a fight and highlighted that the alleged mastermind of the attack was well guarded. A Russian television reporter has been killed in Ukraine. Igor Komalyuk was killed while covering the crisis in the Ukraine. According to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, he was attacked by mortar fire along with his crew near the eastern Ukrainian city of Luhansk, a regional security bloc.
The Pakistani army has confirmed that 25 militants have been killed by airstrikes. The army continued its crackdown on militants in North Waziristan for a sixth day, killing more than 20 Taliban and other fighters. 6 terrorist hideouts, including a training camp and an IED making factory, were hit. Dozens died, including 8 soldiers, during the siege of Pakistan's largest airport, including the assailants. A curfew remains in effect, and all routes leading to North Waziristan remain sealed off, with no one allowed to move out. Defense lawyers for the first mate of the sunken Sewol ferry have told the court his client left the ship because he thought the Coast Guard would be able to rescue the passengers still on board. His lawyer said when Sanji Tai realized the growing number of deaths, he went into shock and guilt and tried to commit suicide. The trial of 15 ferry crew members resumed today.
Iran has vowed to defend Iraqi Shiite sites in a battle by insurgents for an oil refinery. The battle is turning into a sectarian war across the frontiers of the Middle East. Sunni fighters were in control of 3/4 of the territory of the Baiji refinery north of Baghdad. Today, 2 attacks hit Shiite markets in Baghdad, a suicide bomber and a car bomb. At least 18 people were killed and 52 were wounded. Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko has set out a ceasefire plan after a telephone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking to students at a military institute in Kiev, Poroshenko outlined a 14-step plan, including an amnesty for separatist fighters who lay down arms and tighter controls over Ukraine's borders with Russia. The Kremlin also said Putin had expressed his concern to Poroshenko over the deaths of 2 journalists for Russian state television who were killed in shelling as Ukrainian forces fought pro-Russian separatists near the eastern city of Luhansk. Poroshenko apologized and said that there will be an investigation into the deaths.
Bombing in Syria has killed at least 20 people in a refugee camp near the Jordan border. The dead are mostly children and women. The army dropped several barrel bombs, highly destructive explosives, on the camp in the village of Sajra. Hundreds of families fleeing the intensified fighting between rebels and the army in southern Syria in recent months had taken shelter in the town near the border. An overloaded boat has sunk off the coast of Malaysia. 34 Indonesians are missing and 3 have been confirmed dead. The boat, whose passengers included women and children, sank at the mouth of a river shortly after midnight as it left Malaysia's Carey Island. It was thought to be bound for Indonesia's Sumatra Island. Police say the boat lacked safety equipment such as life jackets, but that rescues were still holding out hope of finding more survivors. The boat went down in shallow water close to shore.
And again, that was from Next News Network. I have a lot of caution when, U.S. captures Benghazi suspect. Oh, how convenient. Now that Hillary seems to be trying to run, even that seems to be kind of a sham. I don't think they think she could actually win. I think what they're doing is creating a soft target for the GOP, and they want to push probably more of a warmonger candidate. I don't think any true libertarian type person is going to get nominated by the GOP. I just don't see it happening. I've seen stuff like the Free State Project, and up there in Michigan, up in Detroit, you have their, I can't even think of the name right off bat, Free Detroit or whatever, that community. But there was something interesting that I seen from We Are Change, and it's creating a world without money. And this is Scherhaus, Berlin. Give me a second here. Says here in this video, Luke visits the Schurhaus in Berlin and talks to Seven Lager and Gerita Lager, who are the creators of the project, and I'm sure I got their names completely wrong. The goal of the Schurhaus is to build communities of people all over the world who will share their art, music, talents, or time in a barter system that can replace money. And I've talked about this for a long time, about we really could do so much better with bartering. And you can control your value. You and that person can really start controlling the value of your time, your effort, your money. A lot of people complain in factories that, well, I don't get paid for my time. I feel like I'm forced. Part of that's the tax thing, which, again, with bartering, you might be able to get around. I just see bartering as one way of really freeing a society. But I'm going to go ahead and play this.
Outside here in Berlin, Germany. I'm actually outside the Schurhaus, which is a new institution created here that wants to create a world without money, but with art, innovation, music, art, architecture, and just pure creativity. I'm actually here with two of the founders. So can you please tell us your name and tell us what the Schurhaus is?
Hi, I'm Sven Lager.
And I'm Elke Natas.
Which would be impossible for me to pronounce in any way, shape, or form, so I'm very happy that they were able to share the names. So for the people who don't know what the Schurhaus is, how would you best describe it?
It was an idea back in South Africa where we stayed for 10 years to have a place where people can come and share their potential, their talent, their abilities, because we saw that people were thinking they were not good enough, which is wrong. Everybody is good enough.
Yeah.
And if we team together, we can do everything. Yeah. That's the idea of the Schurhaus.
How would you
To connect and to inspire.
Awesome. So can you tell us about some of the projects that you guys have going?
One of the projects, for example, are those boards outside where we had a week of interacting with people, asking them questions, talking about life questions, talking about what do you want to share and stuff like that. And so we had a team of people coming in as well. They weren't prepared, and we told them, okay, stay outside, man those boards, ask some questions, talk to people.
What kind of questions were they?
We told them a few questions they could use, and then they picked themselves some questions. And one of the questions is...
What makes me happy?
What makes me happy?
And is there an answer from a random person that sticks out to you?
I like this one. Flieder. I don't even know what's in English. It's a flower.
So flowers.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
Sleep.
Sleep.
And you could even do likes here.
Yeah, we invented the likes.
Awesome. So it's a way of people just to come and creatively jot down their ideas. So you have what makes you happy. What other questions do you have here?
By the way, my favorite would be seeing people fulfilling what they want to do.
Awesome. Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Yes, which is very important in life, which we don't have a lot of. What do we have over here?
Last thing that was shared with me. Yeah, sure, that was nice. You see, that board wasn't really full, but there were a few answers.
An ear to listening, a beautiful moment, a bottle of wine, Bier und Rosinenbrot.
That was nice. We just opened and there was an elderly gentleman coming and saying, do you know this kind of raisin bread that they do down there in this kind of collective? There's a collective bakery. So he brought me a piece of that and shared a beer with me. And I was like, yeah, that was a good start.
Is there any other answer or any other question that sticks out to you guys? Or that is most memorable to you guys?
Very important is Berlin would be even nicer if it would be at the sea. So that's one of the things I'd like to have.
Yeah. It's very interesting to see this collective of people who just jot down ideas, because we do very similar experiments and very similar videos where we try to get kind of the deeper humanity out there to people, because it's kind of suppressed by people. But what would you say is the mission, and what are you guys trying to accomplish with the Schurhaus?
We really want to get people together feeling that they are part of something, part of a family, and that in this family they can do everything they dream of. So their vision, their dream, their passion is important, and we try to create the family around it. And we're looking for a family for our project, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
But like that, you can do everything. You can change cities, countries, societies easily.
Yeah.
It's
How
much
does,
more than you think.
how does money play into this?
How does
Money.
money?
Yeah.
What is money?
Because that's a big thing also, moving outside of that and being able to create something with common resources that we all have, which I find what you guys are doing is very, very, very interesting. So as far as how can people get involved, where can people find out more about the Share House?
We got a website or a blog, www.thesharehouse.wordpress.com. There we regularly post. Facebook, we do the same. They can come to this place, obviously. They can write emails.
Best thing is to come here. It's in Kreuzberg, Berlin. Fürbringer, Ecke, Solmstraße.
And that's an international place, not only just in Berlin.
Awesome. Just like I just came in here randomly, started talking to you guys, and we have very similar common interests, very similar common goals, and very similar projects. Is there anything else you want to say out there to the world?
We love you. As you are.
Anything else?
You're awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you like this idea, and also subscribe. We got more videos coming to you from Europe.
Now, another thing those boards showed, that many people with many different goals in life, many different interests, many different passions, really feel the ability to come together in the sense that we don't have to share all the same passions and ideas and things to be able to trade with each other. It's actually the differences that should bring us together. Because, well, the guy that has a passion for automotive, that can work on a car, might do that a little bit better than the guy with the passion for building houses. Maybe those guys could barter with each other. Your car needs fixed. I need a new roof, or I want a porch added on. There's so much that could be accomplished with bartering. That also brings the value of your expertise, your abilities up. And I think that has the ability to free, but the type of society that has been created has been one that we have people skimming off the top of our labor using money and taxes. Now again, Bitcoin, one avenue that people are seeking. Gold, silver, and bartering. And I think what the combination between those and many other ideas that are coming out, I think we really have an opportunity to start freeing societies. And again, it really depends on the people. And I think communities of liberty-minded people coming together, I think, is becoming more and more essential to being able to have those pockets of places that you could still live free. Because I feel that the path we're on, we're going to see a lot of these pockets of basically tyrannical and things that abridge other people's rights are going to get worse. In Chicago, out in California, I don't see anything getting better out of all this, and we really will be dependent on pockets of liberty And those pockets are able to expand the more people are drawn to them. Because eventually, those people are going to outgrow those pockets when they're drawn. And they will grow, and maybe liberty could prove all this socialist, collectivist ideology wrong. And we'll have a reversal in what we're seeing right now. And it's the complete opposite. It's getting to that point where you're going to see nothing but little pockets of liberty-loving communities. And I seen something, I forget who, it might have been the Free State Project that posted a link to it. I think it came from Forbes, and I got Forbes right here. Hopefully I can find something. Oh. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. But it was basically what it was a map. And I'm really thinking Free State Project shared it on their Facebook page. So I don't have Facebook up right now because it usually interferes with my broadcast. But it showed, that we are becoming pockets now. And hopefully we will draw enough people in that we can't be overwhelmed. And it's sad to say, but there's going to be places where you might have lived there, your families might have lived there for a long time. But I fear that you're going to see a lack of support and a lack of people. Like the whole thing with the Bundy Ranch. I hope to see more people standing up for others and their property and their rights. But I think there's going to be places that are going to be so tyrannical you're not going to be able to break through that. Those are locked down for now. And I hate to put it like that, but it's not until society sees the differences before people will start rejecting that ideology. And I think some of the newer generations are really completely divided. And I think a lot of these younger generations buy into the whole communism and socialism type thing because they haven't seen the consequences from that. And I see a lot of documentaries coming out that come from the left that they always want to highlight. Let's say one I've seen, they were trying to basically highlight a female worker in a time that females couldn't vote, and she became a communist. And I'm like, it's easy to get people to buy in when those values that, a lot of people claim, oh, that's, Constitution, and those protect our rights. Well, to a point, but our rights are our rights whether it's written on a piece of paper or not. These are natural rights of people, and when you had society at one time going, well, we're not going to treat women as equals, those people are vulnerable to buy into ideology. Well, yeah, communism says everyone's equal. No, it says everybody has to be equal. No one can prosper beyond being equal, which is a fallacy in its own because you have a tyrannical government that usually skims everything off to make everyone equal. And, well, they're an exception to the law. Does that sound familiar today? Do we not see politicians have all these exemptions from the law? And when that becomes more evident to more of the populace, is when we will actually start seeing that reversal of what we're seeing right now. But I think, things like the Free State Project and the idea of the Free State Project, and in the states that are still free to a certain point, to continue to try to create those communities and those pockets of people that share that type of ideology will be crucial to our future. And there's enough places out there, I think, that it would be really effective. And there's people out in Chicago that are understanding, but then there's still a mass populace out there that just they get scared into, oh, the only time I ever see a gun is when it's being pointed at me, therefore I don't like guns. Not understanding the guns are being pointed at you because they know you don't have one to point back at them. You don't have the right as a law-abiding citizen. And the word law has been so construed that people don't understand the difference between man's law and natural law. In those circumstances, man's law says you don't have the right to self-defense, that you must call on the help of government to defend you. They're only 30 minutes away. You're being put in danger, is what's happening. And people like Hillary Clinton understand that. But they don't care. Because when they have guns, they're not scared. And the less guns in the hands of the everyday citizen, the less they have to worry about recourse for their actions. Because now they have the ability to rule like dictators. If you don't see the course we're on as being, well, that same course, then I don't think you have your eyes open to the reality of it. You're stuck in a cognitive dissonance, and it's going to be crucial for people to start waking up from that. And their lives will depend on it, because if you really think they're going to defend everybody, you're fooling yourselves. They're going to defend themselves. And you see that when they lie and mislead you at every turn. Okay. Give me a second here. Okay, this one's a quick one from AM TV. Many of you, I think many of you know AM TV. I'm trying to think of Adam House, I believe. I believe it's Adam House. But this one's what you need to know about the Iraq War. I'm going to go ahead and play this. It's a quick one.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV Alternative Media Television. Here's what you need to know about the war in Iraq. A very grave situation developing in the Middle East. Many of you seeing the horror-filled images released by the BS mainstream media over the weekend with the terrorist organization ISIS assassinating Iraqi soldiers and innocent civilians. If you're to believe the BS mainstream media, that is CNN.
And correction, that is Christopher Green.
MSNBC and Bloomberg News. About 11 years ago, George W. Bush, at the time, invaded an independent sovereign nation named Iraq in response to the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks, an event and an attack that had nothing to do with Iraq at all. In fact, the terrorists, according to the U.S. federal government, was made up mostly of Saudi Arabians, but decided on the behalf of the American people to invade Iraq instead, more than likely with their eye on the prize of that black gold dirty money that makes up oil. Now, of course, we've been involved in this war for over a decade now, with almost 5,000 U.S. soldiers dying in cities like Fallujah, which have now been toppled by the terrorist group ISIS overnight, moving from city to city to city with their eye on the ultimate goal of Baghdad, and transforming this part of the world into a much more dangerous place. This spilling over from Syria and joining the two nations into a giant smorgasbord caliphate of terror that could potentially strike us here at home, something that every American should be very fearful of. Again, if you're to believe the BS mainstream media and your federal government. A few short-lived 3 years ago, Obama, a Democrat, again, there's no difference between Republican and Democrat, allegedly withdrew troops from Iraq. And now the situation has only grown more violent. Now, of course, this is something that the Obama administration likes to pat themselves on the back with, saying that it's Obama's greatest achievement, even though the problem has grown worse now in recent years and in recent days. In fact, I think the Republicans have a very good argument that the failure of the Obama administration to contain the crisis in Syria has only helped to make a situation much, much worse, and the Middle East really much more dangerous and violent. And this has a number of repercussions for Americans and citizens of the world. And they're not just economic. Of course, we're watching oil prices potentially could go sky high, just like what we saw pre the financial crash that made up 2008, in the greatest calamity since the Great Depression, which resulted in trillions of dollars of taxpayer-infused bailouts to save the too-big-to-fail monolithic companies that make up Bank of America, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo today. But outside of all that, not only does it create more instability in the Middle East, but it weakens America abroad and also here at home, demoralizing the thousands of U.S. soldiers that not only died, but that also came back injured physically and psychologically from the conflict in the first place, almost the equivalent of their Vietnam or their Vietnam. Some estimates ranging in the hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians dying in the larger conflicts that have made up Iraq and Afghanistan over the past decade or so. Again, demoralizing Americans here at home, U.S. soldiers and veterans wondering why they took such great risks and why their brothers and sisters died, stepping on IEDs in a conflict that really didn't matter at all. Now with ISIS, a terror group so violent that even Al-Qaeda has disavowed itself with the organization. This is just absolutely crazy to think about. Not only does it weaken our position overseas and weaken us in the eyes of the international community, but it also weakens us here at home and increases our chances of another terror attack on U.S. soil. This really puts America at risk. It puts us in a grave situation. The fact that we've been materially engaging in these conflicts in the first place and then failing to realize any of the goals that supposedly our president, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, set out to achieve. And I think that is the broader point, that this has been the intention all along. It's been a mass destabilization effort, and that has been the goal. It's never been about Operation Iraqi Freedom or setting up a democracy or creating freedom for the Iraqi people. It's really only been about making this world and making the situation in the Middle East much, much worse, which is exactly where we are today. With Baghdad in the process now, as you're watching this video, of being toppled by ISIS and really ruining the hopes of what our purpose or stated agenda was at the time to be engaged in this part of the world in the first place. And again, it's a very dangerous situation, not just for the international community, but for Americans in general. And it proves just how gross the situation actually is and just how inept our leadership has been in recent years. It makes you wonder what's going to happen next. Of course, we're worried about the economy. We're worried about the quote-unquote recovery. But I'm actually personally more worried about a future event, a future conflict, a much worse situation in the Middle East, which I think is global in nature and is really threatening the very survivability of not just the United States, but the international community at large. I'm Christopher Green. Get this out everywhere. Make it viral, hard-hitting and in your face. And I want to hear from you. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen next? Who do you think's at fault? And what do we do now?
And that was AMTV on YouTube. The thing is did we not do exactly what people like, let's say Ron Paul were talking about? Is this not the blowback from us going in there? When we start operating in this manner in other countries, do we not create more hatred? We're forcing our will on a population that might not exactly want it that way. Did we make it worse? And a lot of people will say yes. And I think history will say yes. When you force your will onto something, it'll create more backlash than allowing it to naturally happen. And that doesn't mean that eventually it won't, turn out the way you want. But a lot of people will argue the point that it actually delays the evolution of that. Many people think, they'll talk about the American Civil War. Well, slavery was on its way out, and, it was in other countries after, we got rid of it. But they will point out in those other countries that it naturally was phased out. It wasn't forcibly with guns and a whole civil war, but it naturally was phased out by the populace just going, we're not doing this no more. That the whole racial tensions were not as long lasting as in America. And they blame that on the use of force it creates a blowback, because then you put anger in people. I personally say you have to take self-responsibility for things like that. You have to be able to be mature enough to not allow them to incite that anger in you. But again, they do it with a gun. They do it by force. And if you have an understanding of human instinct, it's to have disdain for those people, or governments. When you're pushed a certain direction, your natural instincts to push back. But when you're guided in that direction, you tend to have better chances. I really believe this is just, this is blowback, and I think it kind of, in a way, reminisces the Iranian coups that our government, CIA or whatnot, organized, trying to control the government in Iran. But I see this as even being worse and more violent. And do I believe everything that we're being told? Oh, hell no. But there's a lot of consequences that will come out of this. And it's not the Americans' fault. It's definitely the government. But I think our generation and generations back and for a long time were responsible for allowing our government to get into this situation. Look how many bases we have around the world, how many countries we're in, and you really have to ask yourself, is this not what was inevitable when we operate this way? By us being in other countries, not really having too many other countries with bases all around our country, doesn't that kind of seem hypocritical? Does that not play into that propaganda to hate us? It's just things that we really have to start addressing more. I think Friday I'm going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin some more. Something I haven't talked about for a while. I've been reading quite a bit up on it and seeing where it's headed and where it's going. And I'll kind of give you my personal opinion and insight into what Bitcoin is doing and where it's heading for the future. Really, we have to start breaking through more of this propaganda, and we have to stick together as communities and liberty-minded people, even when we have different ideas, beliefs, and our personal way of living. And we still have much in common, and it's that we are trying to live our lives in a peaceful way and enjoy it and prosper off of it. And our common interest is not allowing other people and groups of people to rob from us for their personal benefit, and in the process also abridging our rights. That doesn't sound like a civilized society to me. That doesn't sound like an intellectual society to me. A lot of people call these people intellectuals. I don't see anything intellectual as being barbarian and using force against others to get what you want. And usually that's what people try to use as their fallacy for the justification of government, is to keep the people with the bigger stick from taking from others. Well, government is that bigger stick, and it is robbing from you. I think it's a fallacy to think that a government could work for the people, and I think history has proven that. How many governments have been created that we will finally have a society that works for the people, and decades later and hundreds of years later, thousands of years later, it turns to crap. We have to shed that idea. Stay tuned here on UCY.TV for Try This at Home with Dana Martin, and then after that, Boiler Room Radio with Jim Funke. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you Friday. Take care.